I built the fastest guardian farm in hardcore Minecraft, producing over 600,000 items per hour, being held inside of the crusty crab. But what's inside of the guardian's eye will blow your mind. So the first plan of action is to find an ocean monument. Alright, here's one. So to raid it, I'm gonna craft some buckets to fill up with milk, so then when we get mining fatigue, we can get rid of it. Okay, let's get back out there. Where is the other guardian? Okay, oh, here he is. Just sitting here. Okay, that was actually pretty easy. Next up, I'm gonna try and get some of the sponges inside. Oh, here we go, a sponge room. And I think this monument is actually perfect for the farm. And I'm gonna be building this farm by following 5 tasks, with the first one being to drain a monument. And in order to build this, we're gonna need a ton of sand and glass to make the outline of it. So I think it's smart that the next build that we make is the sand duper. So I'm gonna put all the items we need in this shulker box. And now that I've gathered all the resources, I'm ready to build this duper. So now I'm gonna actually clear out this whole area, and I'm gonna set up a beacon so that we can do it pretty fast. The next step to build the sand duper is to remove the end frames from our end portal. Alright, let's give this a shot. Oh, it worked! Let's go. Alright, now I just gotta do that a ton more times. And with this final one, the whole end frame is completely gone, and this looks really trippy. I don't know if I like this. And now for the actual sand duper. I really have no idea how this works, but the build is actually really simple. So the entire farm is built up, but there's just one more thing we have to do. Well, 2 more things. And first of all, we need to load these 2 chunks which the farm is built on. So on either side of this farm, I'm gonna build a little ender pearl stasis chamber. And these are actually really simple to build. All you have to do is put your water at the top, fill it up with kelp, and then break the bottom one. And then look right down the middle and throw an ender pearl. And now this ender pearl will constantly be loading this chunk. Now if we just do the same thing on this side, and once we throw this ender pearl in, both chunks are gonna be constantly loaded. And now before we can complete this, we just have to add the storage. And with the item collector finished, I think it's about time that we turn this bad boy on. Alright, let's turn him on. Seems to be working. Let's go through. Let's see it freaking sand. Oh my gosh. And now it's all being funneled into our storage system. We're never gonna need to farm sand ever again. And while we're here, we might as well just fill up a shulker box of sand, because the next thing I need to make is a super smelter. And the items for this one are a little bit more complex, but still nothing we can't handle. And to start, we need to get a ton of building blocks. And now that we have those sorted, we need over 500 hoppers. Luckily, I believe we have all of the iron here. We just need a ton of wood, and we have the perfect farm for that. Yeah, this is a lot of hoppers. And after gathering the rest of the resources, I was ready to build the super smelter. And I think a great area for it would be right here, right next to our sugarcane farm. So we're gonna need to first remove all of these houses, and then flatten out the surrounding area. Alright, yeah, this should be enough room. The smelter was super simple to build, and it even has a built-in carpet duper, so it never runs out of fuel. Alright, it's time that we load up our first bit of sand. Oh my gosh, they going fast. This was definitely worth it. Oh my gosh. That was probably 2 to 3 minutes, and it's already done. The next step is to build the outlining circle that's going to be surrounding the farm. And just for scale, this is what the actual circle looks like. I think this is the biggest drainage on YouTube. And I know I placed the whole ring in normal glass, but I've been trying other glass types, and I think the blue actually looks really good next to the water. And if I want to make all of the glass blue glass, I'm going to need a blue dye farm. And for this farm, the materials are actually really simple. So the next step is to find somewhere that spawns blue flowers. And according to my research, this area has the most blue flowers spawning in it. So this is where I'm going to be building the farm. So now let's test this thing. By putting the bone meal in this chest, it should make its way over to the dispenser. Alright, this is looking very promising. And after one short run of the farm, I had enough dye to make all of the glass. And after all of the grinding, I had a little over 3 shulker boxes of the blue stained glass, which meant it was time to finally place all of it. Alright, and we have the entire outline done in blue stained glass, and I think it looks amazing. And the next step I am now looking forward to, and that is draining this entire thing. So once I got all of the sand from the duper, I was ready to put up the walls. And to place all of the sand, I need to build up this little mechanism, and this allows me to place it a lot quicker. And once the piston can't push anymore, we just have to rebuild the contraption and do it all over again. And these walls divide the water into areas, so that when we drain out the water, it's a lot easier. This video took me over 250 hours to record, and only 96% of you guys are subscribed. And it's been my dream to reach 100,000 subscribers, so I'll make a deal. If we can hit that goal of 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, I'll mine 100,000 diamonds. So, I don't want to pressure you into subscribing, but if you like the content and you're interested in watching more, maybe consider it. And that was the final row. Oh my gosh, that took a while. And now we can grab our sponges to start draining the monument. But first, I'm gonna place down a nether portal, because when we place wet sponges in the nether, they turn back into dry sponges. And the walls should be the perfect distance away from each other, so then we can drain in between them super quickly. And after finishing the first layer, it puts into perspective how much more I need to do. So I grinded out the process of placing the sponges, breaking them, and placing them in the nether to dry. And finally, after about 50 hours of work, we finally completed draining the monument. So the next step is gonna be to get rid of the sand. And we can do that pretty easily by just placing torches under all of it. I actually thought that was gonna be really fast, but it actually took me over 5 hours. And I actually really love the ocean monument in the middle, but unfortunately we're gonna have to remove it because that's where the farm is gonna be going. But before we can say that's task 1 complete, we have to remove all of the water inside of the monument, which actually took a surprisingly long time. And after that, task 1 is officially complete, which then brings us to task 2, and that is breaking all of the blocks down to bedrock, which can easily be done with the use of TNT bombers. But if I use TNT bombers, it can completely destroy the walls. So my plan is to dig the circle's edges all the way down to bedrock, and then once I line them with water, it should prevent them from getting blown up from the TNT bombers. But while I was doing this, I tried updating my game and something terrible went wrong. So I loaded up the world on my new version and I started mining like nothing even happened. But just a few minutes later, I went back onto my inventory and found out that my armor had disappeared. Wait, what? Are you serious? So I had to go mine all of the netherite for new armor, and I had to get all of the enchantment books for it. And after all that work, I was able to finish mining the circle. And this might not look like much, but it took me over 3 days to mine this out. And the next step is to place water all around the edges so the TNT doesn't blow up the walls. Alright, perfect. I think this looks really cool. But now we have to flatten out everything in the circle so the TNT bombers can go through and blow up all of the blocks. And now that that's done, we can start getting the blocks for the TNT dupers. Starting with dead coral fans, which can be found in these coral reefs. But these ones are normal coral fans, and we need dead ones. But we can do that really easily by just putting them on land and letting them dry. And after collecting the rest of those, it was time to move on to the next block, which is slime blocks, which I originally used this machine for, but it was too slow, so I made this machine. Okay, this could either be the best idea ever or the worst idea. And it made use of the large amount of endermen that were spawning in every single second. Yo, oh my gosh. And yeah, it worked pretty well. So then after collecting the rest of the redstone and obsidian that I needed, it was time to finally build these machines. So I'm going to start by building up the first bomber. Okay, and if we flick this lever, it should work. Hey, there we go. And that one is just the first of many to be completed. So once those were built up, I had to build the return stations as well. But before I turned all of them on, I noticed an issue. So there's like these weird caves that are full of water, and they're just super annoying because we can't have all these liquids just being in the way when the TNT bombers come. But as I explored, I noticed there was bigger and bigger caves, and little did I know this would become a huge issue. But before we get to that, it's finally time to load up the machines. Oh my gosh, this looks insane. And if I had to guess how I was gonna die in this series, it would be to these machines. Oh yeah, and I accidentally blew up the beacon while we were doing the tests, so I'm probably gonna have to get a new one of them. Alright, let's start by just sending a couple of them. Alright, perfect. They seem to be going pretty well. And after this, I discovered that I had the worst possible luck. The heck is this? There's no way that this Bro. I discovered that under the ocean monument, there was a huge water cave. You gotta be kidding me. So now I had to go through it and remove all of the water from this massive cave, and trust me, it took a long time. And now that we have all of the water drained, I can finally activate the machines to start blowing up all of the blocks. Alright, go, go, go! Oh my gosh. These bombers were surprisingly fast and managed to delete all of this area in just a few hours. But now I have to mine all of the outside outside blocks that the bombers weren't able to get. Okay, now that we have it dug down to a reasonable layer, we have to break and rebuild all of the bombers at a lower level so that they're able to reach all of the lower blocks and bring it all the way down to bedrock. But during this process, I found something devastating. So after I sent off the last few TNT bombers, I came down and I saw that there was all of these lava pools scattered around. So I had to manually drain out all of the lava pools and continue to do so as we blow up the rest of the blocks. And like usual, break the remaining ones. And finally, we have a completed hole. Well, almost. Because we first have to clean up the TNT bombers, and then we have to do something about these walls. Because as you can see, there's all kinds of holes in them. So I decided to put blue concrete powder in the gravity duper so then we could have a ton of it to line the walls with it. I really like the blue because I think it looks like water and it will match the statue that we're going to be building really well. And now that that's done, we can move on to building the actual farm. And the first block that we need is obsidian. And we have some left over from the bombers, but I'm gonna have to get more. So I'm gonna head to the end and mine away this tower. And the next block that I'm gonna need a lot of is cobblestone. And let's be honest, this farm isn't cutting it. So let's break down the old one. And then I think right here will be a perfect spot to build this farm. And then if we flick this lever, it should start working. Oh, yeah, I think it's working. I don't think the TNT is working. I was right. It wasn't working. So I tore it down and rebuilt it, but that also didn't work. So I built this brand new design and it worked amazing. Finally, we have cobblestone. So then I had to take all of this cobblestone and throw it in the super smelter to make stone. Oh man, this is gonna take a while. So I did this until we had enough stone to make all of the stairs that we're gonna need for the farm. And I also threw some sand in there so then we can get the glass that we need. And finally, it's time to build the farm, which is pretty much these columns of water pushing the guardians into the portals. And now that that's done, we need to make our way into the nether because now we have to build the storage system, which actually puts all of the items in shulker boxes and then puts them in chests to store a lot of items. And with the farm done, we have completed task 3 out of 5 with the farm, which means it's finally time to build the statue that's going to be surrounding the farm. And as for the blocks, we get most of them from the farm. So I guess let's just start building with the blocks that we have. So as you can see, I did a decent amount of the statue already, but there's some holes left in it. And that's because copper is going to be going there and I currently have none of it. So I gotta head to the mines and get to work. And then we'll throw these in the super smelter. And then we're going to take these and start spreading them out so they oxidize. And while we wait for those, we can get back to building the statue. And this took me multiple days, but you're getting it in just a few seconds. And then it was time to finally place the copper in. I don't think this is gonna be enough. And finally, the build is finished. Well, almost. I still need to add the orange spikes. And the first item we need is orange wool. And I think right here is a perfect spot for this farm. So I built up the farm and bred all of the sheep that we were going to need to put inside of it. Okay, let's lead the sheep into his pen. There we go. And now I have to do that about another 50 times. And perfect. Now we'll have all of the wool that we're ever going to need for this build. And the next blocks we need are orange concrete and orange concrete powder, which we can get super easily with our gravity duper. And now that those blocks are out of the way, the last one we need is red wool, which all we have to do is take some poppies from the iron golem farm and combine it with some of the orange wool from our wool farm. And then it was finally time to build the spikes on the side of the statue. And you can probably notice there's some floating concrete powder, and I just put some string under it so it didn't fall. And after building all of the spikes, we've officially completed task number 4. But then I realized something that I really didn't like. Every time I come out of this portal, I look at the storage system and I really don't like the way it looks. So I want to gather all of the resources we need for a crusty crab to put around it. Alright, now that we have all the blocks, I guess let's just get to work. I really like this build because I think it goes well with the ocean theme and it's a good place to store a ton of items in. But I'm getting really annoyed by this big glass pillar, so I'm going to put the sign right in front of it. And after finishing it with the pearl, it is complete. But now I want to head back to the actual statue so I can work on the eye. So I started by building the white outline, but as for the red part in the middle, I want it to open as a door so we can get inside of the statue. So let's open it up and see if it works. Okay, it looks good so far. Yes, I think it works perfect. But now we have to figure out what we're gonna do with the inside. There's gonna be some crazy things in here, so we need to make this look as good as possible. So I'm gonna start with the main entryway that's gonna connect to all of the tunnels that are gonna be inside of here. These rooms are gonna get crazier and crazier as we go on, so I'm just gonna start off with a little research room. And because it's level 1, it's nothing too crazy, just some shelves and some tables to show that it's a research lab. But I think it looks really cool with all these redstone and computer type things, and it looks really techy. But now it's time to move on to level 2, which is pretty much just gonna be a storage room. But now that we have the lower levels out of the way, we can finally move on to the cool room. So I'm gonna start by building the outline, which is pretty much just the room. But my idea for inside of it is to have all the different stages of how a guardian is made. Alright, so here are the evolutions of a guardian. So we start off with this little tadpole, but then he grows up a bit and becomes a little bit bigger, and it keeps growing until it becomes the full-size guardian. Okay, but now we can actually get to the cool rooms. My plan for this room is to have 2 animals in each test tube that go in together to create the guardian. And in my opinion, there's 2 mobs that do this perfectly. But before that, I'm gonna start by bringing the guardian over. Okay, if we place the minecart here, it should go. There we go. Okay, he's going all the way down now. Alright, and there we go. He made it successfully in. But for this next mob, we have to actually travel out a little bit, because we have to find these warmer parts of the oceans where the pufferfish are gonna spawn. Oh, here we go, here we go. Gotcha, little fella. And now that he's as snug as a bug in a rug, we can move on to the second mob. And we actually have to go to the end to get this mob. And I'm gonna head over to the Enderman farm to get a ton of ender pearls. And if you can't already see where this is going, we're gonna use these to get an endermite. Yes, finally. And with him in there, this completes the 4th out of 5 room, which means it's time to work on the 5th and final room, which is going to be the biggest and best out of all of them. So I completely grinded out the room because I was so excited to start the build that was going to be going inside of it. And with the rocket ship done, that fully completes the entire farm. And it really makes you think, what am I gonna do with all of these resources? Remember to subscribe, because if we hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of 2025, I need to mine 100,000 diamonds.